Hello and welcome back. It's our third video. If you notice, the background occasionally changes because I'm trying to work out what's best, and it's work in progress. But anyway, I'm enjoying the videos. Again, we're in the book of Mark, and we're in the second chapter. Last time we stopped, around verse 20 or so, second chapter. I'm going to read over some of that, and we'll talk about it. Anyway, I'm glad that we're having a chance to do this, and we'll find out what the Lord has to tell us today. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start in, let's start in verse 17. Let's start in verse 16. This is King James Version. I'm in chapter 2, verse 16. And when the scribes and the Pharisees saw him eat with publicans and sinners, they saith unto his disciples, How is it that he eateth and drinketh with publicans and sinners? When Jesus heard it, he saith unto them, They that are whole have no need for a physician, but they that are sick I came not to call to righteous, but sinners to repentance. And the disciples of John and the Pharisees used to fast, and they come and say unto him, Why do the disciples of John and the Pharisees fast, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then they shall fast in those days. Right there, we're kind of covering some ground that we talked about yesterday, but last video, not yesterday. But anyway, Jesus is eating with publicans and sinners. And so publicans being tax collectors, and I guess maybe other people that work for the Roman government, and sinners being, people who are low report, I guess, for the area that they lived in. So interesting. So Jesus is having these meals, and the scribes and the Pharisees being kind of the guys that, they kind of ran the synagogues. They kind of had more to do with the people around them. I think scribes were probably a little more removed because they were the ones who, scribes meaning I'm assuming writers. I may be getting way off my, what I really have a good handle on, but I'm assuming that they were people that, were probably more into the law and less contact. But I do know the Pharisees, however, had a lot of contact with the people and usually had a lot of respect, and they were also, kind of the keepers of, I guess, maybe the police, the holy police in the area, and they had a lot of influence over the synagogue, which of course was where they met, most people in the time of Jesus met, and discussed the scriptures and such. So anyway, these guys are really coming down on Jesus because he's eating with these people that are the complete opposite of them, who are the outcasts of the first century Jewish life. This particular time, they were under, of course, Romans rule, and so publicans were people that worked for the occupier, the enemy. They were just not thought of well. The Romans crucified their friends and family, and they would go in and take their property and quarter in their homes, and so they were a pretty ruthless bunch. And so if you were working for those guys, you were not well liked, and you were not considered someone that anyone should be associating with. And here's Jesus hanging out with them. And so in the sinners, we could assume those are prostitutes. It seems to me like I've heard that term in I know I have in other versions, but I'm using the King James Version in this study because most people have that, and it's just the version I don't have to worry about any kind of copyright, silly enough. But anyway, talking about scribes. Anyway, we are moving on. So Jesus is being, slammed by these guys, and later on, as the followers, disciples of John the Baptist, and the Pharisees are saying the same thing, and Jesus is saying, look, this is a little different here, and I'm a little different. I'm not any of those things you've ever seen before, and I'm not going to behave in ways that you probably expect, and this is one of them. And the people that are with me are probably not going to behave in ways that you expect either. He's saying, look, this is, I'm running my show, and I have the authority to do so. And if I want to spend my evenings with the outcast and those who are not thought of well, the ones that you don't like, that's my choice. And this is where I'm going to be. This is my mission. And these are the ones who will listen to me, because my message is the message of inclusion, love, acceptance, forgiveness, all those things it would take to hang out with people like this that you're not practicing. I think what Jesus might be thinking when he's saying these things to these Pharisees and followers of John and scribes. But Jesus does go on to say that the day will come, though, when these guys are going to fast, because the bridegroom is going to be taken away from them. And so there's going to be a shakeup for these guys, unfortunately. But for now, they're not going to fast. Those times they will fast in the morning, but not now. But goes on to say this, look, he says, no man seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filled it up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse. In other words, the new piece shrinks, makes the whole worse, makes the thing that you sewed it on, because it wasn't shrunken. So when you washed it and it dried, something shrunk and it tore. So it made the tear worse. He's talking about teachings. He's saying, I'm teaching some stuff that ain't going to fit with your preconceived ideas. It ain't going to work. So it's going to cause some tearing of the fabric of things around here, So, she's pretty good, with his little, he knows what he's talking about here. So then he goes on and he says, hey, no man putteth new wine into old bottles, or else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred, and the new wine must be put. He says, let me just start again, because it's King James Version. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles. Again, the same thing. Actually, the reason why new wine burst old bottles is because there was no more stretch left in them. They were inflexible. New wines put in new bottles was because those wines, as it fermented, would grow and stretch as that wine fermented. And so the reason why you couldn't put another new wine into, because there was no more stretch left and it burst. And so he's saying the same thing about, the teachings of the Pharisees and these people that think they got it going on, like Donkey Kong, around the temple and such, and around the synagogues. He's saying, oh, no. He says, I'm teaching something that is going to take a whole new set of, what's the word I'm looking for? Point of views, maybe. Epiphanies. These guys are supposed to be learned, so I'm sure they don't have to learn a new lesson. They have to learn in the doctrines of the day. They need to learn a new lesson in the heart of their professed faith and what they're following, what they're building their lives honestly, I kind of have compassion for the Pharisees because I feel like, they were probably uh, they were probably trying to seek the right things and they were just misled. But Jesus is saying, look, you've been misled and it's hard to stomach. But you're going to have to let those things go because they're not going to work in the new teachings. And really, Jesus' teachings was just the fulfillment of the law. It was love. It was about loving and forgiving and doing the things that God does, not for us. All right. Verse 23, chapter 2. And it came to pass that he went through the cornfields on the Sabbath day, and his disciples began as they went to pluck the ears of corn. And the Pharisees said unto him, Behold, why do they on the Sabbath day that which is not lawful? And he said unto them, Have ye never read that what David did when he had need and was hungered, and he and they that were with him, and how he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and did eat the shewbread, which was not lawful to eat, but for priests, and gave also to them which were with him. And he said unto them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. Oh. And these are the Pharisees he's talking to. So anyway, they're trying to bust him. Again, because this is a Sabbath day, and there were a lot of laws about the Sabbath day. You could only walk so many steps before it was considered work. You could only do you couldn't walk outside of, like, I think your home or something on the Sabbath because that was considered work, or maybe outside your block. I know there's something about that. Sometimes it was considered outside your city. Back then, the cities were more like citadels. They had walls, so they could tell you where you could stay inside the walls. Like Jerusalem. Not all cities. Certainly not in Jesus' time. Jerusalem, I think, was still walled. And so anyway, they had lots of laws on the Sabbath. You couldn't do a lot of stuff. So you had to kind of arrange everything the day before, and then turn loose the day after, I guess. And then the day there were a lot of restrictions, and one of them was, of course, you could not harvest on the Sabbath. And so, by them walking along and plucking these, it says ears of corn here. I've heard it also said that it was pieces of wheat that they were threshing out in their hands or whatever, and eating the little kernels of wheat. And so they were catching hell for this because it was Sabbath. They were saying, why are your disciples doing what is unlawful? And he's saying, look, okay, again, all right, knock, knock, knock. Here we go again. I got to reinforce something that maybe you guys aren't getting. And maybe you guys have forgotten what the Sabbath is all about. The Sabbath should be about reflecting on God, because God worked, and on the seventh day he rested. And so he asked his people to rest and make the Sabbath day holy. And so I don't know how all these laws got into work, but man, it was just tying a huge burden on the backs of people on the Sabbath day. And I don't know, I guess, hunger doesn't preclude, not working. If you're hungry, I guess you're allowed to eat, even on the Sabbath. Although there was fasting and things that took place on the Sabbath too, so maybe that's what he's balking at here, because he may have been breaking the fasting laws about not only not eating during the fast, but also not harvesting on the day of rest, the day that was supposed to be set aside to make it holy. And Jesus is saying, hey, there's something else here. There's something else going on. And he says, look, even the guy you claim to be the son of, David, the king, second king of Israel, the one who established Jerusalem as the center of Israel. Anyway, the guy that you claim is the house that you fall up under, or at least your countrymen want to say that they are children of David. I guess, I don't know. I know there are family ties that tie people into specific, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. But I think by this time, they had lost track of some of those tribes anyway. Anyway, I'm getting way offhand, but he's saying here, I want to see the text. He's saying, look, I'm telling you now, the one who you're dealing with here is trying to show you that, like, even if David could eat the shewbread because he was in need, and he ate it on the high priest, and I think he even went in there on the Sabbath. Maybe Jesus has at least as much authority as the high priest. Maybe that's what he's getting at here. All right. But anyways, it ends where Jesus says, therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. By the way, the Son of Man, that's another reference that Jesus uses for himself. It is not used by, I think, anybody else. It might be, but I would have to research that. But I don't think it's used by anybody else. It's mentioned that one as a Son of Man was in the fire during when the three Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown in there, and he said, look, I know we threw 3 men in, but I see 4, and one is as a Son of Man, but he's bright, glowing, and so they brought him out, and 4 didn't come out, only 3. And then also in that same book, the book of Daniel, it talks about the Son of Man in the end of time. So Jesus is calling himself the Son of Man. And there's a reason for that. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take a few minutes at the beginning of the next video and I'll talk about that a little more, because it is important in the overall state, because that is Jesus's moniker for himself, is the Son of Man. And so I will try to get into that more next video. So it ends out saying, therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. So he's saying that he is Lord of the Sabbath. Again, Jesus is not only doing 2 things. He's bucking the system, again, by telling them, hey, your interpretations of what the 10 Commandments were about and keeping the Sabbath day holy were not God's intentions. And I'm telling you, I have the authority to do what I'm doing here, and don't sweat it. Okay, so I'm going on to the beginning of chapter 3. In the King James Version, book of Mark, Gospel of Mark. So chapter 3, verse 1. And he entered again into the synagogue, and there was a man there with a withered hand. And they watched him, just as they. And they watched him whether he would heal on the Sabbath day, that they might accuse him. And he saith unto the man which had the withered hand, stand forth. So, and he saith unto them, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days, or to do evil? To save life, or to kill? But he asked them. He just had the man stand up and he asked them. And he's putting them on the spot. But they thought they had him on the spot. Turning the tables. But they held their peace. And when he had looked round about on them with anger, being grieved for their hardness of heart, he saith unto the man, stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it out, and his hand restored, whole as the other. And the Pharisees went forth straightway, took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. I bet they got up and walked out. Doesn't say that, but that's what I see. I bet they were just like, oh, throwing their hats on. Let me get out of here. Freak. So anyway, there we go. All right. Well, it looks like we're at 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and stop here. And we will return to that. And I look forward to seeing you guys next video. Bye-bye.